This episode was conducted in person and online, and the majority of the names have been changed to respect the privacy of our guest. We also want to mention that this episode contains graphic descriptions of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as references to suicide. Please use discretion. When Emma was born, where were you living?
I living basically in the car. Emma's bed was a $5.99 plus tax laundry basket from Target. That's her bed. If you would see me on the streets, you would never think like, oh, I'm homeless. Nobody knew I was homeless. Just the people at Starbucks who knew I was homeless, or at Dennis Steiner because I was there every night. I would just buy something to drink, and they would give us sometimes food, like the pastry, they were not allowed to sell the next day or whatever. I would just get like the leftover stuff. But I mean, what is a woman doing with an infant in a coffee shop, I mean, like at a night sometimes.
Can you pinpoint the moment it all changed?
Yeah, the moment I moved into the shelter. There was the moment I was getting more resourceful. It was the first time mentally I didn't have to be afraid. I could sleep the night. From then on, everything changed for me.
I'm speaking with a past student of mine named Amira, whose name we've changed, along with the other names of people mentioned in this episode. A few times during the semester, Amira asked if she could bring her 6-year-old daughter, Emma, to my class. To say Emma was behaved would be an understatement, considering only once did I have to ask her to be quiet during my 3-hour lectures. When I commented to Amira about how impressed I was with Emma's behavior, she said very matter-of-factly that Emma was always just a really good baby, even when they were homeless. Prior to meeting with Amira, I had assumed the majority of our conversations would be about what it was like to raise a child while living on the streets of San Francisco. I hadn't prepared myself for the complexity of who Amira was, the trials she had endured in her past, a past which can be credited, at least in part, as to why she ended up on the streets, while equally being the very reason she had the skills to survive homelessness at all. I'm Katie Mihalik, and you're listening to Shadow Clock. To really understand Amira, you have to start at the very beginning. I mean the very beginning, a time before she was born. We have to start with her mother, Sarah, and her father, Malik, as well as introduce you to Amira's namesake, her older sister, who had the name Amira first. Amira's parents grew up in Turkey, and it was there that her mother, who was Jewish, married her father, who was Muslim, and both families were against the marriage from the start. But for Sarah's family, it wasn't just the religious differences they were upset about, but social class as well. Sarah and Malik got married anyway, and Sarah converted to Islam on behalf of her husband. Shortly after the marriage, they moved to Germany to work in a guest worker program that was part of Germany's reconstruction process after World War II. It was in Germany they had their first child. They named her Amira.
I had a sister. She was the firstborn of my parents, and her name was Amira. And she died when she was 10 months old.
After the death of their daughter, Sarah and Malik tried again, and this time they had a boy, Aslan. And then, 2 years after Aslan, came Amira, our Amira in this story. From the moment she was born, things were difficult for Amira, even just to be named.
My grandpa died in Turkey, and my parents went down there, and they were in a car accident, and so I was born early. My dad wanted the name Amira to live on, and my mom was against it. She said she doesn't want to use the name again. This is from her first child, her dad's child.
But it didn't matter. Amira's father went ahead with the name, and in the meantime, there was another problem. Amira was too weak to go home from the hospital, and the stress of having another baby who might die was too much for Amira's mother to deal with.
She didn't want to see again like losing a child, so then she left me in the hospital.
Amira's parents went back to Germany, relinquishing their responsibility to Amira's mother's parents. After 3 months in the hospital, Amira finally was sent home with her grandparents.
My grandparents gave me the name Neshe It means happiness. And so I guess they were happy to have me, that I was able to stay with them.
When Sarah and Malik did visit, Amira was always told the truth about who they were, but the meaning of who they were really didn't sink in.
Like they were like this man and woman I saw when they came to Turkey to visit, but I felt like they were like aunt and uncle. That's about it. So, and I lived with my grandparents until I was almost 6.
One day, Amira was told she would be going to live in Germany to start school. There, she would be living with her parents, her brother, a sister, Layla, who was now 3 years old, and very soon a new baby brother, Mikael, who would be born about 9 months after Amira came to live with her new family.
So in January 79, I moved to Germany, and here I am. I don't speak the language. I don't have my name anymore. The name, I was called my whole life until I moved to Germany. And then here I'm living with my older brother and totally strangers.
Amira was forced to leave behind not just the only parents she had ever known, but also her name and seemingly everything that was associated with its meaning of happiness. From the start, the move was hard, starting with her name being changed back to Amira, a name she was never able to live up to in the eyes of her mother.
And she still, to this day, she always compares me to that child, that I'm like a disgrace to that name because I am not good. If she would be alive, she would be better. The only time I can say I had a happy childhood was with my grandparents. The day I moved to Germany until past 18, I was abused, physically abused by my dad. And my mom would encourage it.
It was while listening to Amira tell one horrific story after another, she suddenly paused and asked me if I knew what okra was.
You know okra, right?
The food.
Yeah. To this day, I cannot eat okra. I can't even look at okra.
Because of the smell or taste?
No, just just the memories come back to me, There was the food I hated to eat, but my dad would always make me to eat until I would just gag and throw up. When I would not eat, he would just put me in the cellar, in the basement, in the dark. And then
as a little 6-year-old.
Yes. And then he would make me to eat it. And then I would throw up, and then he would make me to eat my barf. So yeah, and I don't know. I don't even recall my parents saying once in their life, we love you, So, and as a kid, that. And I would always say, I was crying. I wanted to go back to my grandparents. There was no love in this family.
Amira's childhood was filled with different abuses that she and her siblings endured. However, Amira bared the brunt of most of it for 2 main reasons. 1, she fought back, whereas her other siblings did not. 2, the boys were favored over the girls, she and her sister Layla.
For example, we were not even allowed to eat with them. My sister and I, we had to always sit in the kitchen. Yeah, we had to always serve them and help them, but, we were not allowed to have meals with them. So we would always, but we loved it because we didn't want to be sitting with them anyway. For us, it was great.
Over the years, Amira continued to fight and tried several times to run away. Finally, Amira and her sister Layla were sent to a boarding school that happened to be Catholic, which, interestingly, added yet a third religious background to Amira's upbringing. And much like at home, Amira was always in trouble at school, defiant and sure to stand up for what she believed was right.
The boarding school was very strict. If you didn't show up for your meals or come late for the lunch, there was it. There was no food. So then I would break into the kitchen in the school to steal the food. I mean, yeah, if you're hungry, man, what are you going to do, right? They made you basically steal the food. Being in the church, at the chapel all the time. And I'm like, look, I'm not doing this. I would always feel bad for Jesus hanging there, suffering. And in the bedroom, I would just take the cross from the wall and hide it and stuff in the room. I didn't want that thing in my room, Why is he looking at me while I'm sleeping, and stuff like that, And stuff like this, I would get in trouble. So, and I would always speak openly about, what I was thinking.
And she did, without fail or remorse. When told to sing Germany's national anthem, she said,
I'm not singing that. I'm not singing it. Look what you did in the Holocaust, and here I am, I want to sing for Germany.
Or when she was told the meat on her plate wasn't pork, a meat that isn't eaten by Jews or Muslims.
And I said, no, this is pork. They're like, no, it's beef. I'm like, look, it's the same like my friend's food, the other students' food. They're like, no. And I'm like, I just throw it out the window, stuff like that I would do. It's like 13, 14, and so I will stuff like this, I would get in trouble.
I imagined Amira chucking a plate of pork out the cafeteria window, and to be honest, I could totally see it. Amira was an excellent student, one of my best. But what made her a strong student were the same qualities she was describing in herself as a teenager: outspoken, direct, and determined.
I would go home on the weekends or on vacation when the school was closed, and there was always beating going on somehow because I wasn't obeying, I was just like, and then I'm thinking like, why did I even come home? But then they would show up. They would be at the Friday at 2:00 when it was dismissal. They would be there. I had to go basically with them home. The verbally was the worst, like calling out names and cursing and all this. So, and I saw like my brothers, how much freedom they had. It was okay for my brother to have a girlfriend, but it was not even okay for me just to talk to a boy without being like called out names or, like the worst names you can call, like you whore, you bitch, like you're dishonoring our family and you're not a virgin. And came to the point he even took me to the hospital to make sure that I'm still like a virgin. Then they had to, look at you and they had to give my dad, you're okay. And I felt like, I'm sitting there, I'm kind of like...
How degrading.
It is degrading. That's what I told you. I hated being a woman. And that's what I'm saying. Like, growing up, I always wanted to be a boy. And I had short hair. So, I was always wearing baggy clothes. So, just to look like a boy. But it doesn't mean like, like I feel like, like I wanted to change my sex. There's nothing to do with like changing sex or gender identity. It was more like I wanted to be treated as a man to get everything what like this culture was giving the man. And I didn't have the privilege for that. And that's what I was always fighting for, that, I am more than being a virgin.
This pressure of being a virgin was not something that Amira was facing alone. There are extensive reports of the plight of young Turkish-German girls and the expectation that they must remain virtuous until married. And as the girls got older, Malik's paranoia only worsened as relatives pressured him to do something about his daughter's obvious turn toward Western culture.
My dad was always threatening us that he will not let me live in the boarding school. It's cost too much money. And also because I was getting more like westernized for him. He thought like I'm becoming like more like a German girl.
It was in the spring of '89 when one of Malik's sisters invited Amira and Layla to a coffee shop in town. The girls agreed to meet, and while there, the aunt suggested they visit a family friend who lived nearby. They were told the friend was also a psychic, a mostly unimportant but intriguing detail. At this friend's home, the girls were offered Coca-Cola, and oddly enough, especially in the context of Islam, whiskey. Amira said she does remember thinking that was weird.
And here we are, like I'm like 15, my sister is 12. They're giving us whiskey to drink, and they've been insisting it's good for your heart.
She also remembers the Coke tasting funny.
The taste of the Coke, it was like very bitter. It was not this taste of a Coke, and I knew, okay, something is not right.
Amira didn't know it then, but she would find out later that on top of giving them whiskey, the women had put sleeping pills in their drinks. A short time later, the sisters were told they were going to a restaurant, and they needed to get into the car.
My sister, they had to drag her into the car because she couldn't even walk. And I was just so drunk from all the stuff they gave us. But I was still like focused. I was still like able to see what's happening.
As the four of them drove, it did not take Amira long to realize that they were not going to a restaurant. Slowly, the town faded behind them as they drove out into the countryside.
And then suddenly we end up in the forest. And then I see my dad's car. And then I'm like, oh my God. Then I knew there's something so bad was happening.
Amira and her sister were transferred to her father's car. Inside was her father's cousin and her youngest brother, Mikhail, who was 9 at the time. Their aunt came along as well.
So I'm with my sister, my aunt, and my little brother in the back seats. And I couldn't get up because my dad locked the doors automatically.
Malik told his daughters he didn't want them in the boarding school anymore, that they were becoming too westernized, so he was taking them to live with their aunt, the aunt who was riding in the back seat with the girls. But this didn't make sense to Amira. Her aunt lived in Mainz, a town in the north of Germany, and the road signs Amira was seeing indicated they were driving south or southeast. And then she saw a sign for Bregenz, the border town between Austria and Germany. It was then that Amira knew they were taking she and her sister into Turkey. As the car approached the border, Amira knew she had to get help. She waited until the car was through the German side of the checkpoint and into Austria before she made her move.
And I was able to open the door. I just remember I was just running. And then I could just hear the police screaming like, halt the boy, halt the boy. They didn't know what's happening.
The custom agent ran after Amira, who they'd mistaken to be a boy with her short hair and baggy clothes.
They stopped me and I just said yeah, my dad is kidnapping us. Yeah, so they arrested my dad. They let everyone go but my dad.
The police interviewed the girls and pushed Amira to file a report, but she was afraid, not just of her father, but of her entire family.
I was afraid they would kill us. They would kill us. If I do this, then I'm dead.
Did your mother know?
She tells me she did not know. She tells me she did not know, and then I'm thinking how could you not know? She still to this day insists she did not know that was happening.
I'm going to stop here for a moment and break down what exactly was happening and why Amira and her sister were being taken to Turkey in the first place. But in order to do that, I need to give you a broader background into the societal constraints of conservative Turkish German culture, something I knew little about until I started researching Amira and Layla's story. I also want to clarify that the abuses we're about to discuss do not represent what true Islam is. Just as when reading about sexual abuse in the Catholic Church or Kool-Aid drinking followers of Christ in evangelical sects, it's important to keep in mind that such horrific actions don't define the religious institutions and constructs they are unfortunately representing. We're talking about fundamental extremism. I say all this as I do not want Amira's story to be taken out of context to be used as ammunition in perpetuating Islamophobia. However, I also want to make sure not to ignore the oppression many Turkish German girls are facing within Germany's borders today. The sisters' kidnapping received national attention in Germany when it all took place back in 1989. The German news magazine Der Spiegel ran an article documenting the endemic abuse and killings of Turkish German girls and women in Germany. The article exposes numerous crimes committed by fathers, as well as brothers, uncles, extended family, friends, and even by female relatives such as aunts and mothers, just like in Amira's and Layla's case, whose story was one of many the article referenced. According to the article, Amira's dad wanted to take his daughters to Turkey to marry them off for money. At the time the article was written, a German-Turkish bride could bring in between $3,000 and $18,000. But when I asked Amira about being taken to Turkey to be married, this is where her viewpoint splits from the article. She was never convinced it was to be married off. Instead, she actually wonders if it was to be killed. To give you a fuller picture of the kind of systemic abuse Amira and her sister were up against, I'm going to share with you a brief summary of a few other stories from the same article that the girls were featured in. I should warn you that what I'm about to share is graphic in regards to descriptions of violence as well as sexual and physical abuse. The article begins by talking about a 16-year-old Turkish German girl named Fadia, who was taken into the forest and shot in the head by her brother, who was acting on orders by their father. She was murdered because her parents didn't approve of her boyfriend. Another story about a 16-year-old girl named Ramzia was reported to have jumped out of a window. She was taken to a suicide prevention center where she explained she was afraid of her mother, who had forced her to have her vagina sewn shut when she was only 9 years old. The reason? Because Ramzia had come home late from a shopping errand. Now a teenager, Ramzia was afraid of what her mother might do to her as she was spending extra time out with friends. And then there were the documented reports of brides who were no longer a virgin and forced to undergo the process of having a gynecologist reconstruct their hymen, a painful procedure done shortly before the wedding, all to make sure the girl appears to be intact before the marriage is consummated. The article goes on to specify that Germany's own Islamophobia makes seeking help even more difficult for Turkish German girls, as they are already isolated by the prejudices against Muslims within German society. The reason I decided to summarize these aspects of the Der Spiegel article is because it's only after reading them that I'd begun to fully understand the world Amira was living in, what exactly she was up against, and how lucky she was to even be alive. After the kidnapping, the courts tried Amira's father and found him guilty only of child neglect. The boarding school Amira and her sister were attending was given custody of the girls for the next 2 years, and their parents were required to continue to pay for their education until they graduated. And that's exactly what Amira did. She graduated. After graduation, Amira decided to get her certification to teach kindergarten and preschool.
I loved kids all my life. I knew I was 6 years old already. I want to work with kids. That was always my calling. They're the most vulnerable things anyway. Like if you save one kid, or one human being, you save the humankind, like you do.
I found that statement to be quite profound. The part about knowing since she was 6 that she wanted to work with kids and the way she felt about children needing to be saved. It made me think of the 6-year-old Amira, all alone, forced to leave Turkey, with no hope of anyone coming to save her from her new home, except herself. And now, here she was again, all alone at just 18 years old, completely on her own. No family to turn to for support of any kind. But if you haven't figured it out by now, Amira is strong and determined. After she finished her training to become a kindergarten and preschool teacher, she set out to experience a year abroad as an au pair.
In Germany, I was always 2 people, Turkish Amira, and then the German Ami. Ami was my nickname they gave me when in boarding school. But when I came here in the States, the first time in my life, I was free. I was able to be who I am. I was sent to a family in Virginia. A single mom with 3 boys, 10, 6, and 3. I had the best time in my life.
Amira not only loved her job, but she was also doing well supporting herself financially and making friends. At the end of her first year, she and a group of friends took a trip to San Francisco, and Amira completely fell in love with the city. So much so that when her job assignment came to an end in Virginia, she went back to San Francisco to continue working as a nanny. She worked hard, and even harder to keep her working visa in good standing. When it would run out, she would go back to Germany and work any job she could find. And this back and forth went on for years, until she met someone, an American man, and they got married. This man would be the first of several partners who would bring Amira back into the folds of abuse.
I guess I was looking for the bad guys, I guess, because it's the only thing I knew about what men do to women. For some reason, I tend to always think that I can help these people to change them. This is, I think, like one thing that I always had like relationships that were abusive. And I'm telling you, verbal abuse is sometimes worse because that doesn't heal. If you get hit, the bruises go away, but the verbal abuse is in your head, it doesn't go away.
But in true Amira fashion, she did eventually find her way out of her marriage, and so began the next chapter of her life. At age 34, she was self-reliant, single, and full of energy. Remember, this is the early 2000s, an era of techno, ecstasy, and clubbing, and Amira loved all of it.
For me, it was more than escaping things, going clubbing, taking a pill, and to escape all my demons I was with, and that kind of like kept me alive too, I think. To having that kind of a group of people I was going out and clubbing with and having just a good time and not worrying about nothing.
It kept you alive.
That kept me alive. That's how I see it too, I was enjoying myself and forgetting about everything, and I was still working. I was still organized. I was doing my job. I was very responsible. I would never go high to my job. I was not doing that. You have no idea who I did drugs with. Doctors, I'm not kidding you, lawyers, CEO, I'm not kidding you, start a company, Google people, but they go Monday to Friday to job, right? So I was calling myself, I'm an organized partier.
As Amira drifted through the club scene, she eventually met someone, a British man named Steve, and once again, the pattern of abuse reared its ugly head. In this case, the abuse was verbal, And as we've heard Ameera say before, that verbal abuse can sometimes be worse than the abuse that leaves the physical bruises.
Oh, it's just crazy, right? This is like the only thing I'm not able to break through. Even though you try, they're nice in the beginning, and then you fall for it, and then you're in it, and then it's like, there's no way you can get out somehow.
Have you had any healthy relationships?
No, I never had any. Even his mom told me, you don't need to take this. His dad was the same. Like the yelling and all this, his temperament, and, you don't need that.
Even with Steve's mom telling Ameera it wasn't worth it, Ameera and Steve stayed together 10 years. They both had jobs. They had a house they were renting. They had friends. They had a life together. Over the years, Ameera contemplated leaving. But one thing that is tricky about verbal abuse is that it can be hard to identify because you can't see it. There aren't physical marks for you to use as proof to convince yourself that what is happening is actually wrong. And like most abusers that hurt their partners both physically and verbally, Steve did have another side to him, a side that wasn't as ugly. They all do. If they didn't, nobody would be falling for them in the first place. Abusers are good at letting that charming side sneak through every once in a while, just enough to give their partners a glimpse of hope that they can change and be that better side of themselves all the time. But in Ameera's case, there was one more additional thing that kept her in this relationship.
Always wanted kids, but then I guess, and now I get pregnant, and
You never got pregnant.
No.
And how old were you at this point?
Or in my 30s, so yeah. And then, I was almost 40, and I was getting old, and I just didn't, and I knew if I just leave him now, who I'm going to find that fast who was willing to have a baby with me.
And there it was. Ameera wanted a baby. In the end, she never had to make that choice on whether to leave or stay, not completely anyway. In 2008, the housing crash plummeted the U.S. economy, and Steve lost his job. Shortly after, in 2009, he was offered work back home in England, and he decided to go. And Ameera decided to stay. And without his income, she had to let the house they were renting go too. For the first time, Ameera was homeless. I would imagine many of us have begun to realize that homelessness has many faces that don't match our previous preconceptions of what homelessness looks like, especially with the current housing crisis the U.S. has been facing even before the pandemic. In Ameera's case, she was working. She was always working, but she suddenly found herself in a city in which she couldn't afford. Remember, this is 2010, and between the dot-com boom in the first part of the century and the 2008 crash, the cost of living in the Bay Area was simply put not manageable anymore, not unless you made a lot of money. Of course, she could have tried to move and start over somewhere else, but that takes resources. To start over in a new city, she would need money and a job. And she had a job here. She had money too, just not enough. She did consider moving back to Germany, but the idea of being back near family, near all the childhood traumas, she just couldn't face going back permanently. And who could blame her? San Francisco had become her home. By this point in her life, she'd been living here longer than she'd ever lived in Germany. And even though she didn't have family she could call for help, she did have a good network of friends here in the city. And so, she decided to stick it out. She was able to couch surf and keep herself afloat until she found employment as a nanny that also came with room and board.
I moved in with a woman named Sally, who I was a nanny for. I was watching a 10-year-old kid. She was paying me, $12 an hour, less than I was getting like somewhere else, but it was live-in, so it was okay.
It actually all seemed more than okay as the work partnership started off strong. Sally and her son even accompanied Ameera on a trip to Germany, where Ameera introduced them to one of her former teachers, who had become a lifelong friend. For the next year and a half or so, things were pretty good, except for one thing.
Before 40, I'm like, oh my God. Everyone left and right is having babies. And here I am. I could be the best mom, and I'm not getting pregnant.
As time was going by, Ameera could see her dream of becoming a mother slipping away.
And I'm like, yeah, look, I do want to have a kid. And they have these two options. Either I go to a sperm bank, and they know anything about this guy's past. They can tell you anything they want to tell you, what they have a PhD, they have this, they could be mental. Or I called Steve. I knew that people were against it. They're like, don't do this with him, don't do it, and I'm like, I said, I knew it from the day one on, if I get pregnant, I'm going to be a single parent, and I signed up for that.
Did you tell him if you had a kid together, did you want him to be a part of her life or no?
Yeah, I mean, he can be a part of her life. That's great, but I knew it. I'm not going to be living with him. I would never move where he is. Like the yelling and all this, his temperament, and I don't want this for my baby.
Okay, so you asked Steve if you could have sperm.
Yes.
And he said yes.
Yes.
Not only did he say yes, but he and Amira didn't even have to meet, as he'd agreed to freeze his sperm before he moved to England in 2009. This meant whenever Amira was ready, she could actively try to get pregnant. That's how much planning went into Amira wanting and trying to have a child. Over the years, Amira had kept waiting for the right time, but the right time just never came. Finally, she thought she better try before it was too late. And when she did try, it failed. The artificial insemination didn't work. Another year went by. Still employed with Sally, Amira decided to try again. But this time, she called Steve and asked if he would meet her in Germany, where she could try in vitro for a quarter of the cost than it would cost in the United States.
Worked out first time.
Amira found out she was having a girl, and right away, she chose the name Emma.
I was in heaven. It was like the best news I had in my life, yes, I'm going to be a mom, yes. Everything was perfect, and I never felt like sick or nothing. I was still working to the day I gave birth.
Everything was going fine until just a few weeks before Amira was due.
I had cramps, and I told Sally, if something happens to Emma, I already had the name for her. I knew it's a girl. If something happens to Emma, I will kill myself. You say things like this.
Sally took Amira to the general hospital, and Amira sat down while Sally checked her in.
Then I get these people coming up to me, psychiatrists and all this. They're like, oh yeah, your friend just told us you want to kill yourself. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I'm here to get an ultrasound. And I've been sitting here for how long already? And I'm like, look, don't you say this. Something goes wrong. Oh, I just want to die. Why would I want to kill myself? I said, They locked me up 5150 while pregnant.
For those of you who don't know what 5150 is, I'll let Amira explain.
So if you tell me you want to kill yourself or you want to kill someone, they have the right to keep you for 72 hours. They put you in a psych ward. It's called 5150. So they kept me.
The hospital kept Amira for a full 24 hours before they decided she wasn't a threat to herself or anyone else. The cramps ended up being nothing serious, just regular pregnancy discomfort that Amira hadn't experienced since her pregnancy had been so smooth up to this point. She called Sally to pick her up at the hospital, and to Amira's surprise yet again, Sally said no. Without any money on her, Amira grabbed a cab and told the driver she'd have to go into her apartment to get cash.
As I walk into the apartment, I see her going through my stuff. And we're like, what are you doing? And then, nothing. And I knew it. I cannot be. And maybe she planned something in my bags, some drugs or whatever. And I did not feel safe. I just had to get out there.
Amira says looking back on it, Sally's strange behavior wasn't as out of the blue as it may seem to us. She admits there had been some tensions surfacing between the two for some time. See, Amira's relationship with Sally's son was good, but Sally's own relationship with her child was anything but.
She never had a good relationship with that boy. But here I am. I had a very good relationship with him, but then when she was around, he would act out.
Do you think she was jealous of your relationship?
Oh, big time.
To be honest, I've never been totally convinced that this was just about jealousy on Sally's part, though I do think that played a role in regards to how she was acting toward Amira. That being said, I couldn't help but think things got weird with Sally, simply because she didn't want Amira working for her if she was going to have a baby of her own. If my hunch is right, what's really sad about this is that Amira is far from alone when facing this sort of situation. As of February 2022, nearly 1 in 4 women reported that they considered leaving their jobs due to a lack of reasonable accommodations or fear of discrimination during pregnancy, and 1 in 5 are documented to have experienced mistreatment in the workplace once pregnant. And those statistics come from women who feel empowered enough to come forward. Think of all the women who pick up odd jobs here and there trying to get by, or low-income parents working to provide for their families who can't risk coming forward for fear of losing their job. Regardless, whatever the reasons for Sally's behavior may have been, it was enough for Amira to know she couldn't stay.
I felt safer staying in my car than like staying with that woman.
It's almost like, though it was just a friendship, it was still another cycle of abuse. It was almost like the whole thing all over
Yeah, and
again.
she would start like, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy at all, man. But no, I knew it. It's gonna be okay. It will be always okay. I always find a way to make it okay.
And if you haven't noticed by now, that is exactly what Amira does. She always finds a way to make the impossible work out. At 9 months pregnant, she packed up what little things she had, put it all in her car, and left. Her car would become her home for the next 2 years. I've had a lot of conversations with friends, acquaintances, and even strangers about how homelessness happens. And I've been really surprised to find out how many people feel that homelessness is a choice. To understand things better, I reached out to Chris Richardson, the Chief Program Officer of a Bay Area organization called the Downtown Streets Team. Their mission? To provide a pathway to recovery from homelessness while also restoring personal dignity and hope. I specifically asked Chris if he thought homelessness was a choice. And here's what he had to say.
I've been doing this now for over 13 years, and very few people I talk to say, I don't want housing. And what I've seen time and time again, people ask me, what's the number one cause? And it's a lack of a support network. And for most of us, that's family. That when we fall down, when we need a little help, they're there to pick us up. And we're talking about people who often don't have a leg up, right? Or never had a leg up.
It was like Chris was describing Amira without even knowing her.
When you think about it, if someone's stably housed and they get laid off or they have a major event that they can't afford or something like that, they don't move out that night onto the street, right? They go through the rest of their month's lease. They might stay in a motel. They might stay with family. They might stay with friends. And because the systems that are supposed to prevent homelessness can sometimes be overly bureaucratic, restrictive, and in many cases insufficient, especially considering other factors, shrinking middle class, lack of affordable housing, wages not keeping up with inflation, let alone housing prices, right? All those things. It becomes a slow descent into having to rely upon shelters and having to rely on organizations like Downtown Streets Team for your most basic of needs.
In Amira's case, she was doing the best she could to get those needs met on her own. She was still working a few other part-time nanny jobs, and so she was bringing in some money. The problem was, like her job with Sally, those jobs didn't come with housing. And even if the money was enough to get a place on her own, there was one more problem.
Yeah, but then, the thing was like I wasn't able to rent a place. I didn't know that you need to have a credit card in order to build up a credit. And so I never got credit. So then I could not rent a place.
I remember a time in my life when I didn't have credit as a college kid, and I needed my mom's help to rent my first apartment. Thinking about this made me think of what Chris Richardson had to say about family being a major component as to whether or not someone could get ahead or even stay afloat, and how true that was in Amira's case.
Once you become homeless, that's the hard part, to get a place again, Even if you have a job, you can't even get a job because you need an address to put on the application. So, and that's what I'm saying, it makes me upset and seeing people think if you're homeless, you brought it up to yourself. The thing is you lose your job, and it's not like you can stay in your apartment until you find a job again. You lose your apartment, you get evicted.
Emma was born on September 22nd, 2012. When Emma was born, where were you living?
I living basically in the car. Emma's bed was $5.99 plus tax, laundry basket from Target. That's her bed. Nobody knew I was homeless. Just the people at Starbucks who knew I was homeless, or at Dennis Steiner because I was there every night.
Yeah.
What is a woman doing with an infant in a coffee shop, you know? I mean, like...
And you were there every night?
Every other night, sometimes. I would just buy something to drink, you know, and I would have I would just go to the bathroom with Emma. Emma had her baths, first bath Emma had was in Starbucks. Yeah, I was afraid Emma might get sick because I didn't have any heater in my car. And even if I would have a heater, I couldn't let the car running because it's going to cost me gas.
Were you always pretty safe in the car? Did you have problems?
Yeah, like during the day, nobody was bothering you that much, you know, but in the evening, you get more attention to, you know, I wouldn't stay the whole same night, the same spot there. I would stay for 3 hours, and then I would just move my car, go some other neighborhood and park there for a few hours.
Would you sleep?
Yeah, I would just doze off because I had to set my alarm clock every 2 hours to wake up Emma to feed her. So I would just feed her, and then I would just move my spots. So then it's not kind of like sleeping, right?
Emma was on a 2-hour feeding schedule because she wasn't gaining weight fast enough. She was healthy, but the 2-hour feedings were vital to keep her weight up. I thought about doing these 2-hour feedings in a car, at Starbucks, at Denny's, and alone. Taking care of a newborn is difficult under the best of circumstances. I couldn't imagine trying to do it without a home or support. Yet, without either of those things, Amira took Emma to all of her doctor appointments and regular checkups, as Emma did have low-cost health care under California's Medicaid plan for kids. And for billing purposes, Amira provided the hospital with a friend's address, so they would not know she was unhoused. As for Amira taking care of herself, she did the best she could, using the skills she had acquired from her hard upbringing to creatively find ways to get her needs met.
I would just go and sneak myself into the gym at the community college. I would take my showers there with my baby. I was never dirty. Emma was never dirty. So if you would see me on the streets, you would never think I'm homeless.
But Amira was worried and tired. Despite her best efforts, at some point, she realized she couldn't keep this up. She needed help. Tell me a little bit about when you decided to go to Child Protective Services.
In Germany, if you're in a crisis and you need help with your children, you go to CPS, you tell them, look, I don't have a place to live. Can I place my kids, in a children's home or foster home until I get my stuff ready, and then I just come and then get my child back. So the kid is at least safe. He's not on the streets or whatever, right? So I went to CPS. I felt like, okay, Emma is 2 months old. And I'm like, I'm here, I'm homeless, and I'm living in a car, and I just need help. Is there any way I can place her, in a foster home, and until I find a place. And they're like, oh no, it doesn't work here like this, honey. I remember how he said it's a honey. And I'm like, don't honey. I hate when people call me honey. I'm not your honey, especially when a man says that. I don't like that. And then he's like, when you sign this right now, you are giving all the rights to us and, to the state. And you will have a hard time to get the child back because you need to prove, you have a housing, you're financially stable, you're mentally stable. It can take years, he told me right there. And I'm like, okay, you know what, never mind. And I just took the paper right away. I just ripped the paper off right there. And I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing this. He said, make sure you don't get arrested sleeping in your car.
Don't get arrested while sleeping in your car. In one of the richest countries in the world, in one of the richest cities in the world, the only advice San Francisco CPS had to offer Amira was not to wind up in jail. After that, Amira was scared. That's when she started frequenting the 24-hour diners, using what little money she had to buy something small so she could just sit there, limiting her risk of getting caught in the car with the baby. Already exhausted, she gave up sleeping at night completely and instead slept in her car only during the day, when it would look less suspicious.
I would just park always in nice neighborhoods, but then they would still knock on my door, people were walking with their dog. Knock on my door, lady, you cannot sleep here. These fancy neighborhoods. And I'm like, am I harming you? I'm just staying in my car. What does it do to you? But it's their neighborhoods. Looking out for the neighbor and then seeing my car. It was an old Acura Integra, did not fit there.
I think of all the money in San Francisco, in the tech companies, in the million-dollar homes, of all the politicians saying they have plans to get things on track, plans that never seem to come to fruition. And I find myself wondering, how did everyone become so ambivalent?
Did you ever get stopped by a cop?
No.
Not once?
No, not once.
Not in 11 months?
No.
Were you working anymore?
I was working as a nanny with Emma. I took Emma with me as a nanny. It was not like that much hours.
For a different person?
Yeah.
Did they know you were living in your car?
Yes. They offered me, look, you stay with us. I'm like, no. They had a tiny apartment. I didn't want to do that to them. They had all like the brother staying there. Okay. And then I just didn't want to do that. And if you're on your own, it's easier to go couch to couch. Then when I had Emma, it was not easy anymore.
Through various nanny jobs, Amira was able to make enough money to get basic needs met, like gas for the car. And she had food stamps for Emma. She just couldn't pull ahead enough to get housing, especially without the past credit history. So you might be wondering at this point why Amira didn't try a homeless shelter or a woman's shelter. Well, she did. She put her name on a list, even before Emma was born. But the average wait time for a bed in a San Francisco shelter, then and now, can be up to 6 months or more.
In June, they had the spot for me, but it was in a mixed shelter, men and women. And I didn't want to go there. I do not want to be around this.
Was it scary?
Yeah, of course. You don't know. Is somebody going to next to you masturbate? Is somebody going to next to you touch you? Or your baby?
Yeah.
So I couldn't.
And they would have allowed you in with a baby?
Yes. So then I decided I'm going to go to a women's shelter, no men allowed.
And so Amira crossed her fingers and hoped a spot would open up in the women's shelter soon. But another month went by, and still nothing. Friends started encouraging Amira to go back to Germany, thinking things could be easier for her there. One of the families she was working with even offered to help with airfare.
And then they said, we pay you a ticket, just go to Germany, what you doing, I
have to say, if I didn't know the details of Amira's past rooted back in Germany, I would have thought the same thing. Wouldn't Germany be so much easier and so much less expensive than San Francisco? But then I imagined Amira going back to where all her troubles began, and possibly having to be near family, a family who didn't even know about the existence of Emma. I could see why Germany was the last place Amira wanted to be. She was at a crossroads and needed to make a move.
Just didn't know how I'm going to survive here anymore.
Amira knows the exact date she moved to the shelter.
2013, 29th of August. The moment I moved into the shelter, there was the moment I didn't have to be afraid. I could sleep the night. I didn't have to be afraid to be caught with Emma in the car. I had my own room. I had my own bed. First time since 2010, I would say. I was getting more resourceful. I was hearing from other women, where they get help, where they go, and what to get, and what to get. They'd been in the shelter, they knew where to go, and and one thing led to the other thing. And I think the day I left this crazy woman and I moved into the shelter, everything changed for me.
Emma turned 1 in the shelter about 1 month after she and her mom arrived. And when Amira says one thing led to another, she's not kidding. This is what I think many people don't understand in regards to homelessness. Sometimes someone just needs that first break, that first moment that gets you inside a shelter, or someone that takes a chance on you and gives you a job, or a friend or family member who lets you live with them while you're getting on your feet. It's that one chance that actually has to appear for the rest of the chances to unfold. But what if someone never gets that chance? Then what? Amira was at the shelter for a total of 12 months. And during that time, she suddenly had support in ways she couldn't imagine. The shelter wasn't just giving Amira and Emma protection from the streets. It was giving them a network of support she had never experienced before in her life. She had guidance on how to enroll in welfare programs and access to other subsidies she had never known existed, including a program that assisted low-income women with childcare.
So she was in daycare, and I'm like, great, if Emma is in daycare, I can go to work. And so I'm like, I just need a place.
One day, yet another opportunity presented itself. An employee at the shelter told Amira about a subsidy grant that provided housing for people going back to school. The woman thought Amir would be a good fit for the program.
They told me, look, we have the subsidy program. You have to go to school to get a degree, and we help you subsidizing your rent. And I'm like, okay. It was always my dream, to have have a college degree.
And so once again, Amir seized the opportunity. 10 months after coming to the shelter, Amir started school, and she and Emma moved into their first apartment.
It was the first home Emma had. Basically, she was just living in cars and shelters.
I met Amira a year before she graduated from college, and to say she worked hard is an understatement. She was a stellar student, engaged in class, and so eager to learn. And not only did Amira get her degree, but she graduated with honors.
So I'm the first one in the family who has a college degree. So yeah, I am very grateful for that because the shelter made me basically to get my college degree. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was not easy. There were times I wanted to give up when things were getting harder. And I'm like, what is it I'm doing? But you can't do it. You have to believe in yourself. You need to have a drive for something. You need to have a drive. My drive was Emma.
It wasn't just her own schooling that Amir worked hard to obtain.
When it was time for finding a school for my daughter, I toured 16 schools. I applied to 14 schools. And now she goes to one of the best girls' schools in this country, And so we did this together. And in the end, she was accepted on a full ride.
Emma is now 10 years old, and she's doing really well in school. I asked Amira why she chose the school she did for Emma.
I want her to love being a woman. Even at this age, I want her to be free and be empowered as a woman, That's why she can be a girl, and it's okay, right? She can be a girl with me, and she needs to be empowered as a woman. I want her to be strong. I want to be, stand up as a woman and fight for her rights. I couldn't, I tried, and I was always held back.
Does Emma know you guys were unhoused?
Of course she knows that we talk about this all the time. The shelter we used to live, she knows where the shelter is. She knows when I pass the spots, I stayed the night with her. I point out, I say, Emma, look here. That's where we stayed the night one night. It's easier to park. So I tell her, we stayed here. I tell Emma, you know what? You lived in every neighborhood. This homeless, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We're passing the homeless every day, the tents. Emma told me, Mama, do you think they like sandwiches? And I'm like, I'm sure that they like sandwiches. She's like, why don't we just make some sandwiches and give it to them? But it cannot be peanut butter sandwich because they might be allergic to it. So we have to give them sunflower butter, right? Then she told me, Mama, they are not born homeless. They used to be somebody's babies. And she's so right. Look at all the homeless you see, even the most crazy out there. They used to be babies. I'm sure they used to be cute babies. You have to always see that in front of you before you judge a homeless because he is an addict now or he has an alcohol problem or he is taking a shit on the street, which we have seen all the time. But they used to be normal people before they ended up where they ended up.
Amira was one of the lucky ones. She ended up being able to get herself out.
Even when bad things happened to me, there was always, on the end, something good coming out. Even though I was homeless, I was abused, I was put down, I was not valued, living as a woman. But it just made me stronger for every abuse I took in. For every downfall I had, it made me stronger. I teach Emma, there's less fortunate people than us. And I believe in you need to be good. You need to be good to the people around you in order to be happy, to be grateful what you have. So every night when we go to bed, I'm not religious, we don't pray. What we do is a ritual. We say thank you, thank you. Thank you so much being in my life. Thank you, you came at the right time, you saved my life, and thank you, Emma. I could have not done this without Emma. I would do it again and again. I would do it again at the worst. Just to have Emma, I would do it.
Before we go into the credits, we want to mention that we've listed some resources in our show notes should you be in need of support, as Ameera was. Please know that you're not alone. This episode of Shadow Clock was created by Adam Gould and me. Post-production audio is by Matt Sorrow. Social media is managed by Spencer Masternack. German document translations were done by Jacob Frey. Music is credited to Pond5 and Premium Beat. Content contributors, composers, and individual song titles for each episode can be found on our website at shadow-clock.com. Kate Cosgrove creates original illustrations for each episode of Shadow Clock, which you can also see at shadow-clock.com. A special thanks goes out to Alejandro Velez, Adam Gould, Kate Cosgrove, Matt Sorrow, Jacob Frey, Bruce Sibley, Spencer Masternack, Josh Kobach, Johnny Messina, Sydney Kuipers, Barry Brem and Miles Brem, Adam Zavaslag, Austin Krieg, Alec Jansen, Forest Hills Northern High School in Michigan, Duro Howard, and Kelsey Hayes. A huge thank you to Chris Richardson, Kamba Fletcher, and the entire Downtown Streets team for hosting me at one of their meetings. You can learn more about the Downtown Streets team and what they do by going to show notes. Finally, thank you to Ameera for sharing your story with me, and thank you, Emma, for all your patience and letting me borrow your mom for this story. Ameera, your courage and bravery continue to impress me, and it's been an honor to get to know you over the last few years. To our listeners, if you like the show, you can spread the word by telling someone else about Shadow Clock, and of course, by following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Shadow Clock Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Shadow Clock Pod, and on YouTube at Shadow Clock. I personally want to express just how much it means every time you give us a click, a like, a subscribe, or follow. And we love word-of-mouth endorsements. Your support means the world, and I can't thank each and every one of you enough. As we are an independent out-of-pocket podcast, creating this entire first season with zero funding, we very much welcome donations. You can make a donation on our website by going to shadow-clock.com and clicking on the donation button. Donating is one of the best ways you can help us continue to share these stories. And with that, I'm Katie Mahalik, and this is Shadow Clock.